Chapter 5 is called Sin and Autonomy, and it tries to draw out the social implications of the biblical idea that sin is an expression of autonomy in a sense of deciding for myself what is to count as good and what is to count as evil. Now, there are lots of different ways the Bible talks about sin, aren't there? Sin is transgression, sin is exchanging the truth of God for a lie, and so forth. But I think the idea that sin is autonomy is perhaps particularly fruitful for cultural engagement today, because autonomy is a fundamental value of the modern West. It's a very deep Enlightenment value, the idea that we should decide for ourselves, use our own reason, in the way that the Enlightenment puts it. And of course, that's not always choosing for oneself what's good and evil. Okay, so there's an overlap, but there's also a difference, and there surely is a good sense of autonomy when I take the responsibility upon myself, don't let others decide for me, and so forth. But it's different, of course, with God, isn't it? Because God isn't just one other with an opinion like mine. God is my creator, and so to assert my autonomy from him is, to use Enlightenment terms, I guess, fundamentally irrational. It is not a reasonable and right thing to do if he is my creator, and if he has a character such as the Bible presents him as having. Anyway, I digress. I try to show how individual autonomy, everybody asserting their own right to decide what's good and evil, is actually socially divisive. And Augustine talks about this in The City of God. I can't believe this is the first time I've mentioned Augustine in these videos. He is fundamental. The City of God is the fundamental touchstone text for everything I'm trying to do in this book, and I do talk about him a lot in the introduction to the book, and no doubt he will pop up again in these videos as well. But one of the things that he says in The City of God is that the good of the City of God, finding its good in God, is public in the sense that everybody shares in that same good. They look to God. But that the good of the earthly city is private. Everybody has their own idea of the good. And that leads to social conflict. And because if my idea of the good means that you have to behave in a certain way or treat me in a certain way, or as Thomas Hobbes says in Leviathan, value me as I value myself, you better think I'm as good as I think I am, or there's going to be trouble. If everybody goes around thinking that, then everybody's going to be really frustrated and upset with everybody else, because we don't value each other in the same way we value ourselves, do we? Or is that just me? And so I suggest that autonomy in this sense is socially destructive, and I try and tease that out in a couple of ways. And the second thing, just looking at my chapter outline here, is that I try and push back against this idea that autonomy, letting everybody decide for themselves what's good, is neutral, which is the idea that sometimes comes across. Because nobody has the right to impose their views on everybody, we're just going to let everyone decide. And that in itself is a neutral position that doesn't commit you to any particular ideology or to any particular vision of the good, is the way that it's presented. But of course, that's nonsense, isn't it? Because autonomy itself is a vision of the good of allowing everybody to decide for themselves the meaning of existence. And so autonomy can't sort of take itself out of the ideological boxing ring, if you like, and say everybody else has got a position, everybody else has a vision of the good, but I don't. And that's important because it levels the playing field. Christianity has a sense of what is good in the world, what the meaning of life is, but so does the ideology of autonomy. And that's important to get out on the table so you can look at those two visions of the good side by side and compare them with each other, rather than letting autonomy completely off the hook and saying, well, allowing everybody to decide for themselves what's good and bad is just neutral, but you Christians over there, you have a vision of the good, and so let's try and pull it apart.